We're ready to go on this edition of the Native News Update on this January 4th, 2010. I'm your host for today's program, Paul Demain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com. Here are the news stories for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. A casino gaming commissioner killed by a former employee was about to leave his job and move back to Arizona because he didn't like being ordered to fire people, his wife said. Raymundo Casillas Jr., head of the Barona Gaming Commission in San Diego County, California, was killed December 29th when Donald Roberts went to his office and opened fire, then turned the gun on himself. Julie Casillas told the San Diego Union Tribune her husband was forced to fire Roberts even though he believed Roberts deserved better treatment. Casillas was not asked to terminate anyone without due process and never expressed any displeasure or any plans to leave, said Catherine Cleany, a gaming commissioner and general counsel of the Barona Indian Band. Casillas was a member of Arizona's Pasquayaqui tribe, which operates 2 casinos and had headed its regulatory agency there for several years. The trial of Thelma Rios on charges tied to a 1975 American Indian Movement killing has been delayed until July 6th in state court in Rapid City, South Dakota. Rios is charged with felony murder in relationship to kidnapping and premeditated murder in connection with the December 1975 slaying of Anime Pictou Aquash, who was found shot to death on the Pine Ridge Reservation. The trial for the 64-year-old Rios had been scheduled to begin in March. Her attorney asked for a delay so he could have more time to prepare. Another defendant in the case, Richard Marshall, is due to go on trial in federal court on February 16th on similar charges. A Navajo tribal member is pushing to have an election that drastically reduced the size of the tribal council redone, this time with more support required from voters. The election marked the first time Navajos on the vast reservation voted on a ballot initiative. They overwhelmingly favored cutting the council from 88 members to 24 and giving the president a line item veto. But Tim Nelson contends the December 15th election violated a law in that the initiatives passed without a majority vote in each one of the tribe's 110 precincts. A supermajority vote is required for tribal council-driven referendums, but not everyone agrees on the requirement for citizen-led initiatives. The initiative would not have passed had a supermajority been required. Nelson filed a grievance against Navajo President Joe Shirley Jr.'s office and the petitioners in the latest attempt to quash the hotly contested initiatives that had been central to legal challenges and furthered a rift between some council delegates and the Navajo President Shirley. The Seneca Nation of Indians gaming company that operates 3 western New York casinos is reporting its first full-year net loss. Niagara Falls-based Seneca Gaming Corporation has announced that it lost $19.37 million in the fiscal year that ended September 30th, compared with a profit of $102.6 million in the fiscal period 2008. It's the first time the 6-year-old company has reported an annual net loss, despite posting annual revenues of nearly $700 million this past year. Seneca Gaming has suspended expansion projects for its permanent casino in Buffalo, New York, as well as its casinos in Niagara Falls and Salamanca near the Pennsylvania border. The company blames the weak economy and the credit crunch for contributing to the decision to postpone the expansion projects. The Muskogee Creek National Council struck down a measure December 29th that would have allowed the tribe's principal chief to sign a tobacco compact with the state of Oklahoma. Principal Chief A.D. Ellis had expressed doubts about the measure's passage before the meeting, although he said he had hoped that the measure would pass to put an end to 5 years of struggle between the state and tribe over the issue. Ellis had said before the meeting that the measure should be passed, even though it would require that the tribe give up its tobacco wholesale company, a provision that he didn't like. The tribes previously struck down several compact deals offered by the state and is one of only 2 tribes in the state that now does not have a tobacco compact. The other tribe, the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribe, is undergoing a change in government, but is likely to sign it once the change is complete, said State Treasurer Scott Mecum. Idaho Indian leaders want Governor Butch Otter to create a cabinet post dedicated to improving tribal relations, including resolving law enforcement disputes that erupt because no agreements or trust exist between tribal police and sheriffs in neighboring counties. Coeur d'Alene, Nez Perce, Shoshone-Bannock, and Shoshone-Paiute tribal leaders met recently with Otter, though the Republican governor made no commitments, especially during an economic downturn when he's cutting the state budget. Coeur d'Alene Tribal Chairman Chief Allen said at least 34 states have similar positions. In Montana, Governor Brian Schweitzer has a cabinet Indian Affairs advisor. The governor's Office of Indian Affairs keeps Washington Governor Christine Gregoire abreast of matters involving 29 tribes in that state. This past decade, Idaho and its tribes have tussled over water rights, taxes on reservation gasoline, even Depression-era murals depicting an Indian's lynching in the Boise building that housed the legislature for 2 years. Fisheries biologists in the Pacific Northwest are cheering a record return of coho salmon this year to the upper and middle Columbia River Basin, where the fish were virtually wiped out 20 years ago. Biologists began working in the 1990s to restore coho by introducing hatchery fish from the lower Columbian River and improving dam passage and habitat in tributaries where the fish could spawn. Prospects were uncertain largely because the lower river fish would basically have to be trained to swim to upriver tributaries. Those efforts, combined with improved ocean conditions, are credited with the higher returns this year. 12 adult coho returned past Rock Island Dam near Wenatchee 10 years ago. This year, 19,805 were counted as they returned past the dam. Though most of the returning fish are hatchery fish, returns exceeded all expectations, said Tom Schreiber, project leader for the Yakama Nation tribe in Washington. And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to thank you for joining with us, and come back and join with us soon. Miigwech.